In this segment, we're going to be talking about Brandon Lewis saying Rishi Sunak was too focused on keeping the EU happy over the Northern Ireland Protocol. I mean, what he says here is dumb, because the reason why Rishi Sunak was, didn't want a trade war is because he was Chancellor of the Exchequer. You would see imports massively decline if we entered a trade war with the EU, and food prices having potentially should have gone up more because of the fact that we're not doing physical checks on EU goods, would be further in breach of the WTO rules because of most favourable nations rules, because we're not treating the EU as other kind of third countries to us. And we could also face a blockade potentially from the EU, just a ban of exports if we did this. I mean, there's no guarantee they would do that because it would hurt the EU economically, but it would hurt us way more. And that's the thing that people in the UK don't understand. Just because, taking certain policies hurts the EU, it would do far more damage to us. And they acknowledge that. They understand that. And some things go beyond economics. The Good Friday Agreement would be one of those. And Brexiteers would do well to remember that, I think. So a former cabinet minister has broken cover to accuse Sunak of blocking attempts to break the Brexit impasse with the EU. Now, he's not wrong to an extent. I mean, Brandon Lewis said Sunak put up huge resistance to efforts to override the protocol and was more focused on trying to keep the EU happy. I don't think he was trying to keep the EU happy, but the simple fact is he would have, by breaking the Northern Ireland Protocol, by breaching international law, yes, you would have broken the impasse, the deadlock, but it would have been bad. Just because you've done something doesn't mean it's a good thing. Sometimes doing nothing and saying nothing is better than saying or doing something, especially when you're going to do something stupid like spark a trade war with your nearest rivals. We kind of are rivals. Your nearest neighbours, which would really, really damage your economy. In the role, Brandon Lewis helped develop the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, which breaches international law. So when the sanctions drop, don't forget your boy who was involved and who wasn't. Speaking exclusively to The Telegraph, Lewis claimed that while Sunak declared his support for the bill during a hustings in Leeds, this did not tally with the ex-Chancellor's record in government. It's clear why the Treasury, pushed back against the bill and more sabre-rattling with the EU. It's because they didn't want a trade war. Let's be honest, when you're in charge of the money, when you're in charge of the financial services, the last thing you want is a trade war, especially when Mary McGuinness is already looking at taking away the reliance the EU has on the UK's financial services. Don't give her more of a reason than you have to. Let's be honest here. Lewis claimed that work on the legislation in 2021 had encountered huge resistance from the Treasury, with the department more focused on the EU's likely response. So the Treasury doing its job with doing impact assessment reports and figuring out how bad a trade war would be. Yeah, that sounds real incompetent and real bad. Than the difficulties facing Northern Irish citizens or concerns about the UK's territorial integrity. Now, let's look at this one properly. The difficulties facing Northern Irish citizens. Now, how bad would it be for Northern Ireland's agriculture industry, for example, right, to not only lose the former EU subsidies that they had because of Brexit, but also lose access to the Republic of Ireland? Also lose access to the rest of the EU as well. How bad would that be for the people of Northern Ireland? Economically, they're doing better, in terms of productivity and other things. Their growth rate is doing better than ours in the rest of Great Britain, London aside. Why is that? Regionally, they're doing better. Why? Why do you want to take that away from the people of Northern Ireland? Concerns about the UK's territorial integrity. Now, many EU countries have internal borders. Finland being one of them, the one I cite often because it's the one I know most about, which is literally next to nothing, because I don't know a lot about internal borders. Point being is that other countries have internal borders. They don't talk about territorial integrity. There's no problem there. I get Northern Ireland's a special case, but if the people in Northern Ireland want to reunify with Ireland, that's up to them. The only thing Brexit has done is speed up that process. He says, Lewis says, the Treasury, in my experience, seems to want to try and keep the EU happy again. It's not about keeping the EU happy, pal. It's about making sure the economy doesn't tank because of a trade war. This man's a moron. I don't know why he's posing like this either. It's really stupid. He just looks silly. Sunak's team insisted this week the former Chancellor had been a believer in Brexit from the beginning. I mean, eventually that's going to become not something to brag about, who would continue with the bill until and unless the EU says it's willing to come to the table to renegotiate the protocol. I mean, they're not going to do that. Even in a trade war, they're not going to renegotiate. Why would the EU do this when they are in a position of strength here? Let's be honest. And also the fact that it's going to make them look pathetic on the world stage if they cave into the UK. It will make them look absolutely pathetic. Lewis said the protocol meant that ministers weren't able to get even a Northern Ireland free port off the ground. I mean, free ports suck. That's a good thing. They couldn't get it off the ground because it would create, basically a border on both sides of the free port. Sunak being a long-standing champion of tax-free zones. I mean, again, not something I would brag about. I don't think there's much more. Well, there's a couple of things actually I want to talk about. Liz Truss is apparently someone who understands the union, which she said, let's ignore the Scots, and she kept going back and forth on it. She's a flip-flopper. Liz is somebody who understands the union, has been a strong and resolute defending and protecting the union, yet she's annoyed Scotland. Working on the bill, he said there were times when even the Foreign Secretary was battling against the government machine, but Liz was determined to see it through. I mean, great, she's determined to see a trade war happen then. Great job, Liz. He says, I think it's important because we've seen consistently over the Brexit process that you've only really shown flexibility in moving when they're forced to. That's not the case at all. That's not the case at all. When did this happen? We took unilateral action. The EU did nothing. Fine, they've taken us to court more recently. They wanted to get a negotiated agreement further to the Northern Ireland Protocol. We weren't going to get one because we're stupid. We were playing a stupid game. Let's be honest there. But this argument is ridiculous. The EU being moved when they were forced to. They weren't forced to sign up to the Northern Ireland Protocol. They weren't forced to change the backstop into a front stop. This argument is silly, and this is one Brexiteers keep going back to. Playing down the risk of a hardline stance sparking a trade war, Lewis said the UK and the EU had bigger economic challenges to deal with. Whilst that is true, Russia, etc., but the problem is this will blow a hole in the EU single market. Getting rid of the Northern Ireland Protocol puts a massive hole in the single market for the EU, and it's going to be very difficult for the EU to resolve that without the protocol. Putting a hard border in the island of Ireland would be a disaster. Not for the EU, but for Ireland, for Northern Ireland, but for Europe. Not for the EU, but for Europe, in the sense of you are creating a world where the troubles can return, and no one wants to see that. And that's something the UK, despite being a guarantor of the Good Friday Agreement, looks to be something that something they're willing to entertain. He says, we're dealing with issues like Ukraine. The EU's concerns about a Norfolk sausage being sold in Belfast doesn't seem quite in the realms of something they should be overly concerned about. I mean, that's like if Vladimir Putin said, why should the EU be concerned about, quote, special operations in Ukraine? It's ridiculous. It's not just about Norfolk sausages, pal. It's about the fact that we are looking to deregulate. For a start, we're a third country. That's a problem for the EU in terms of for trade. But we are looking to deregulate. We're looking to use chemicals that are banned in the EU. We've already authorised certain chemicals that are banned in the EU, certain pesticides. That's a problem. Also, the fact that sausages are defined by a certain amount of content in them. I think meat and fat, etc. What if we change those definitions? For example, there's a lot of reasons why they wouldn't want British goods in the EU if we started to deregulate, especially with an Australia trade deal on the horizon, which will allow us potentially to import chlorinated beef, etc. The EU don't want that in the single market. That's their decision. It's their sovereign right to have it or not have it. But by putting a hole in the EU single market, it does enable the opportunity for Australian beef and other things to get into the single market, which is a problem. Talking about the sausage, he goes, the Norfolk sausages are sound, they're really good. I mean, it's not about if they're good or bad, it's about the fact that you're allowing unregulated stuff from a third country to get into the EU. That's the problem. There's nothing more I want to talk about. It's all filler and nonsense. If you want to read it, I'll link it below as always. But I think he's lost weight. He looks a lot better. He looks a lot healthier than he did a couple of years ago or a couple of months ago when he said we're breaking international law in a limited and specific way. So congrats to him. But in terms of the content, the intellectual content in his mind, it's as ugly as ever. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.